The slap echoed through my apartment like a gunshot, leaving my cheek stinging and my world tilted off its axis. My sister Rachel stood in my doorway, her hand still raised, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. Behind her, my brother-in-law Marcus shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "You selfish bitch!" Rachel spat, her voice dripping with venom. "After everything we've done for you." I touched my burning cheek, still in shock. In 28 years of life, no one had ever struck me. Not my parents, not strangers, and certainly not my own sister. The woman who had braided my hair for school pictures, who had taught me to drive, who had been my maid of honor just 2 years ago. "Get out," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Oh, we're leaving," Rachel snapped, grabbing Marcus's arm. "But don't expect us to forget this. Don't expect Mom and Dad to forget how you ruined our anniversary trip." The door slammed behind them with such force that my neighbor's wind chimes jingled in sympathy. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door, my hand still pressed to my cheek. The sting was fading, but something else was growing in its place, something cold and hard and unforgiving. It had started 3 weeks earlier with what seemed like a simple phone call. Rachel had called me at work, her voice bright with excitement. "Emma, great news! Marcus surprised me with a trip to Hawaii for our 5th anniversary. Can you believe it? 2 weeks in Maui." I had genuinely been happy for her. Rachel had been stressed lately, juggling her job at the marketing firm with taking care of their 3-year-old twins, Sophie and Jake. A romantic getaway sounded perfect. "That's amazing, Rach. You guys deserve it." "There's just one tiny thing," she'd said, and I should have heard the warning in her tone. "We need someone to watch the twins. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only one I trust with them." 2 weeks. 2 weeks of watching hyperactive toddlers while working my demanding job at the law firm. 2 weeks of sleepless nights and exhausting days. I had vacation days saved up, but I'd been planning to use them for my own trip to visit my college friend in Portland. "Rachel, I don't know. 2 weeks is a long time, and I have that Portland trip planned." "Emma, please." Her voice had taken on that wheedling tone I remembered from childhood. "Portland will always be there. This is our anniversary. This is important." I should have said no right then, should have stood my ground. But Rachel had a way of making you feel guilty for having your own life, your own plans. She always had, even when we were kids. "Can't Mom and Dad help?" "You know Dad's back is acting up again, and Mom can't handle both twins on her own." "Please, Emma. I'm begging you." Against my better judgment, I'd agreed to think about it. That had been my first mistake. For the next week, Rachel had launched a full-scale campaign. She'd shown up at my apartment with the twins, letting them run wild while she detailed all the romantic dinners and sunset walks she and Marcus had planned. She'd sent me photos of the resort, the spa treatments she'd booked, the couple's massages. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip, Emma. We might never get another chance like this." She'd even enlisted our parents, having Mom call to tell me how proud she was of me for being such a good sister, how important family was. Dad had chimed in too, mentioning how Rachel had been looking tired lately, how she needed this break. The manipulation was masterful. I had to give her that. But in the end, I'd made my decision. "I can't do it, Rachel. I'm sorry, but 2 weeks is just too much. I can do a long weekend, maybe 4 days, but not 2 full weeks." That's when the real Rachel had emerged. The sweet, grateful sister vanished, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "Are you kidding me? I've been planning this for months. The tickets are non-refundable." "You should have asked me before you booked everything." "I shouldn't have to ask. You're my sister. This is what family does." The phone calls had turned nasty. She'd accused me of being jealous of her marriage, of being selfish and bitter. She'd brought up every favor she'd ever done for me, real or imagined. The time she'd picked me up from a bad date in college. The time she'd let me stay at her place for a weekend when my apartment was being fumigated. The time she'd covered for me when I'd broken Mom's vase as a kid. Each conversation had gotten progressively worse, until finally I'd stopped answering her calls. That's when she'd decided to show up at my apartment for one last attempt at persuasion. Only this time, she'd brought Marcus as backup. And when I'd still refused, she'd lost control completely. The slap had been the end of one relationship and the beginning of something else entirely. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, my cheeks still tender, my mind racing. I kept replaying the moment over and over, the shock of it, the sound it had made, the look of pure hatred in Rachel's eyes. My own sister had struck me, had physically assaulted me because I wouldn't give up 2 weeks of my life for her convenience. By morning, my shock had crystallized into something harder. Rachel wanted to play games? Fine. I could play games too. I started with the family. Rachel had been smart to get our parents on her side early, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd never told them about the slap. I called Mom first, my voice carefully controlled. Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to the whole story before you say anything. I laid it all out. How Rachel had asked me to give up my vacation time and my own travel plans. How I'd offered a compromise that she'd rejected. How she'd escalated the situation, called me names, and finally resorted to violence. She hit you? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. She slapped me across the face, Mom. Hard. Enough to leave a mark. There was a long silence. Then, oh, Emma. I'm so sorry. I had no idea it had gone that far. Dad was harder to convince. He'd always favored Rachel, his firstborn. But when I sent him the photo I'd taken of my bruised cheek the morning after, his tune changed quickly. That's assault, Emma. Your own sister committed assault. I know, Dad. Are you pressing charges? I hadn't been planning to, but the suggestion gave me an idea. I'm still deciding. Word traveled fast in our family. By the end of the week, Rachel was getting calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all asking about what had happened. Our grandmother, the family matriarch who ruled with an iron fist and a cutting tongue, called Rachel directly. Rachel Marie, you will call your sister and apologize this instant, or so help me God, you'll answer to me. But Rachel, in her stubborn pride, doubled down. She told Grandma that I was exaggerating, that it had been barely a tap, that I was being dramatic. She painted herself as the victim, the poor mother just trying to save her marriage with a romantic getaway, thwarted by her selfish sister. Grandma called me next. Emma, dear, tell me exactly what happened, and don't you dare spare my feelings. I told her everything, including the weeks of manipulation and guilt trips that had led up to the incident. When I finished, there was a silence that could have frozen hell. I see, Grandma said finally. And what are you planning to do about this? I don't know yet. Well, let me tell you what I would do, dear. I would make sure she understood that actions have consequences. Real consequences. That conversation planted the seed of my real revenge. Rachel and Marcus's anniversary was in 3 weeks. They'd rescheduled their Hawaii trip, booking a different resort, paying change fees and higher prices. Rachel had found a teenage babysitter from their neighborhood, though from what Mom told me, the girl was young and inexperienced. I waited until 2 days before their departure to make my first move. I called Rachel's boss, Jennifer, whom I'd met several times at company parties. We'd always gotten along well. Hi, Jennifer. This is Emma, Rachel's sister. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I explained the situation carefully, professionally. How Rachel had asked me to babysit, how I'd been unable to accommodate the full 2 weeks, and how the situation had escalated to physical violence. I'm not calling to get Rachel in trouble. I lied smoothly. I just wanted you to be aware in case there are any issues while she's gone. I know she's been under a lot of stress lately, and I'm worried about her judgment. Jennifer was appropriately shocked. She hit you? Emma, I'm so sorry. That's completely unacceptable. I'm handling it through family channels, I assured her. I just thought you should know, given that she'll be out of the country and unreachable for 2 weeks. The seed was planted. I knew Jennifer would be watching Rachel more closely when she returned, looking for signs of the stress and poor judgment I'd mentioned. My second move was more direct. I called the resort in Maui. Hi, I'm calling about the reservation for Rachel and Marcus Thompson. I'm Rachel's sister, and I need to let you know about a potential issue with their credit card. It was a lie, but a believable one. I spun a story about identity theft and compromised accounts, suggesting they might want to verify payment information before the guests arrived. We appreciate the heads up, the front desk manager assured me. We'll make sure to contact them directly to confirm their payment details. I knew Rachel's credit card was fine, but the call would create confusion and stress at the worst possible moment, right when they arrived for their dream vacation. But those were just the opening moves. The real revenge was still to come. 3 days into Rachel and Marcus's trip, I put my plan into action. I'd been monitoring Rachel's social media obsessively, watching her post photos of pristine beaches and romantic dinners. The captions were all about much-needed rest and reconnecting as a couple. She looked happy, relaxed, completely oblivious to what was coming. That's when I made my move on the babysitter. 15-year-old Caitlin was in over her head. Even from the twins' social media posts. Yes, 3-year-olds had Instagram accounts managed by their parents. Rachel's idea. I could see the chaos. Food on the walls, toys everywhere. Sophie and Jake running wild. I called Caitlin directly. Hi Caitlin, this is Emma, Rachel's sister. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. Her relief was audible. Oh my gosh, Emma, I'm so glad you called. The twins they're a lot. Tell me what's happening. The story that tumbled out was exactly what I'd expected. Sophie had flushed a toy down the toilet, flooding the bathroom. Jake had painted the kitchen table with yogurt. Neither child was sleeping through the night, and Caitlin was exhausted. Have you called Rachel? I asked innocently. I tried, but she said they're on vacation, and unless it's an emergency, I shouldn't bother them. But I don't know what counts as an emergency. Oh, Caitlin, I'm so sorry she said that. Look, here's what I think you should do. Call your parents. Tell them you need help. This is too much responsibility for someone your age. But Rachel will be so mad. Rachel should have thought of that before she left you alone with 2 3-year-olds for 2 weeks. Call your parents, sweetie. Trust me. Caitlin's parents arrived within the hour. When they saw the state of the house and their exhausted daughter, they were furious. By evening, they had called both sets of grandparents and decided to remove Caitlin from the situation entirely, which left Rachel and Marcus in Hawaii with no childcare. The phone calls started at 2 a.m. Hawaii time. First, to our parents, who were too elderly to handle twin toddlers for 11 days. Then to Marcus's parents, who lived across the country and couldn't drop everything to fly to our city. Then to various aunts and uncles, all of whom had their own commitments and couldn't help on such short notice. Finally, at 4 a.m. Hawaii time, Rachel called me. Emma, please. I know we had our differences, but I'm begging you. The babysitter quit, and we can't find anyone else. We're supposed to be here for 8 more days. Her voice was different now. Gone was the entitlement, the demands. She sounded desperate, scared. I'm sorry, Rachel, but I can't help you. Please, I'll pay you. Whatever you want. It's not about money. Then what? What do you want me to say? I want you to acknowledge that you assaulted me. I want you to take responsibility for your actions. There was a long pause. Then, it wasn't assault, Emma. I barely touched you. Then we have nothing more to discuss. I hung up. The calls continued throughout the night. Rachel, Marcus, even Marcus's brother trying to guilt me into helping. But I held firm. By the next morning, they were on flights home. Their dream anniversary trip cut short after just 4 days. Thousands of dollars wasted. Their romantic getaway turned into a nightmare of frantic phone calls and desperate scrambling. But I wasn't done yet. When Rachel returned home, exhausted and furious, she found that word of the Hawaii disaster had spread throughout our extended family. Grandma, in particular, was not pleased. "Let me understand this," Grandma said, when Rachel called to complain about me. "You struck your sister, demanded she sacrifice her own vacation to watch your children, and when she refused, you went to Hawaii anyway with inadequate childcare arrangements. The babysitter was supposed to be fine. A 15-year-old child, Rachel. You left twin toddlers with a 15-year-old child for 2 weeks and thought that was appropriate?" The family judgment was swift and harsh. Rachel found herself uninvited to several upcoming family gatherings. Cousins stopped responding to her social media posts. Even our parents, while still loving, were clearly disappointed in her choices. At work, things weren't much better. Jennifer had indeed been watching Rachel closely, and the stress of the ruined vacation had left Rachel short-tempered and unfocused. She snapped at colleagues, missed deadlines, and made uncharacteristic mistakes. Within a month, she was called into Jennifer's office for a formal performance review. "Rachel, I'm concerned about your recent work. There seems to be a pattern of poor judgment and emotional volatility." Rachel knew exactly where this conversation was headed. She tried to explain about the family situation, the stress of the failed vacation, but it only made things worse. "These personal issues are affecting your professional performance," Jennifer said gently but firmly. "I'm going to need to see significant improvement, or we'll have to discuss other options." Rachel was put on a performance improvement plan, essentially a warning that her job was in jeopardy. The financial impact of the failed Hawaii trip was severe. Between the non-refundable expenses, the change fees, and the emergency flights home, they'd lost nearly $8,000. Money that was supposed to go toward Sophie and Jake's preschool fund, toward the new car they desperately needed. Marcus, who had been mostly silent through the family drama, finally reached his breaking point. "This is insane, Rachel. Your feud with Emma has cost us everything. Our vacation, your job security, your family relationships. When does it end? She's the one who set boundaries and you couldn't respect them. You hit your own sister, Rachel. You committed assault because she wouldn't babysit for free for 2 weeks. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" It was the first time Marcus had directly criticized Rachel's behavior, and it shattered something in her. She realized, perhaps for the first time, how isolated she'd become. Her sister wouldn't speak to her. Her extended family was disappointed in her. Her job was in jeopardy. Her marriage was strained. All because she'd felt entitled to 2 weeks of free childcare and had lost control when she didn't get her way. The breaking point came 6 weeks after the slap, at our cousin Maya's wedding. Rachel attended alone. Marcus had refused to come, saying he was too embarrassed by the family drama. I was there with my boyfriend David, looking happy and relaxed, chatting easily with relatives who barely acknowledged Rachel's presence. During the reception, Rachel cornered me by the bar. "Emma, please, can we talk?" I looked at her. Really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Her usual perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, her smile forced. "What do you want, Rachel?" "I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just say the words." I raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. "I was wrong," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "About everything. I had no right to expect you to give up your vacation for mine. I had no right to guilt-trip you or manipulate our parents into pressuring you, and I certainly had no right to hit you." She took a shaky breath. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I realize I've been treating you like a convenient resource instead of a person with your own life and needs. I've been selfish and entitled, and I'm sorry." It was a better apology than I'd expected, more thoughtful, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. "Do you understand why I couldn't just let this go?" I asked. Rachel nodded slowly. "You couldn't let me think it was okay to treat you that way. If you'd just accepted the apology and moved on, I would have learned that I could get away with it. And do you understand that this isn't just about the babysitting?" Another nod. "It's about years of me taking you for granted, making assumptions about your time and availability, treating your kindness like something I was entitled to instead of something I should be grateful for." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance, but she seemed genuinely remorseful, genuinely broken by the consequences of her actions. "I can't just flip a switch and go back to the way things were," I said finally. "I know. I don't expect you to. I hope that someday you might be willing to let me try to rebuild what I broke." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The rebuilding process was slow and painful. Rachel had to earn back trust not just from me, but from our entire extended family. She had to prove that her remorse was genuine, that she understood the magnitude of what she'd done. She started with small things. A heartfelt apology to Caitlin's parents for putting their daughter in an impossible situation. A public acknowledgement on social media of her mistakes, without trying to justify or minimize them. Honest conversations with our parents about her behavior and her commitment to change. At work, she threw herself into improving her performance, staying late to make up for her earlier mistakes, volunteering for difficult projects to prove her dedication. Slowly, Jennifer's concerns began to ease. The financial recovery took longer. The lost Hawaii money meant delaying Sophie and Jake's preschool enrollment, driving their ancient car for another year, skipping family vacations. But Marcus began to see these sacrifices as necessary consequences rather than punishments, and their marriage slowly began to heal. As for me, I maintained my boundaries. I didn't babysit the twins, not for date nights, not for emergencies, not for anything. When Rachel needed childcare, she hired professional sitters or asked our parents for short visits. She never again assumed my availability or took my help for granted. It took almost a year before I felt comfortable having a normal conversation with Rachel. 2 years before I agreed to babysit the twins for a few hours, and only after she asked politely, offered to pay, and graciously accepted when I said I could only do 3 hours instead of the full day she'd hoped for. The physical scar from the slap faded within days, but the emotional scar took much longer to heal. Rachel had shown me a side of herself I'd never seen: entitled, manipulative, capable of violence when she didn't get her way. Even as our relationship slowly rebuilt, I never forgot that lesson. But perhaps that's the most important part of this story. Rachel learned that actions have consequences, that treating people badly will eventually cost you their love and respect. And I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to refuse to enable their worst behavior, even when, especially when, that someone is family. The slap that ended our old relationship ultimately made our new one stronger, built on mutual respect instead of assumed obligation. Rachel is a better sister now, more thoughtful, more grateful. And I'm a better sister too, more honest about my limits, more willing to set boundaries, more comfortable with disappointing people when necessary. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about forcing someone to confront the consequences of their choices and giving them the opportunity to become better. Rachel's Hawaii trip was ruined, her job nearly lost, her family relationships damaged. But in the end, she gained something more valuable: the knowledge that she was capable of change, and a sister who would love her enough to hold her accountable. The twins are 5 now, happy and healthy. Rachel often thanks me for teaching her to be a better mother by refusing to be their convenient backup plan. She's learned to make arrangements in advance, to have multiple contingency plans, to treat childcare as the serious responsibility it is. And Hawaii? They never did make it back for that anniversary trip. But last year, Rachel and Marcus took a modest weekend getaway to a nearby city, leaving the twins with a professional nanny they'd thoroughly vetted and fairly compensated. It wasn't Maui, but they came back refreshed and reconnected. "It was perfect," Rachel told me afterward. "Simple, but perfect. And the best part was knowing we'd handled everything responsibly." That, more than any apology, told me that my sister had finally learned the lesson I'd been trying to teach her. Respect isn't just given. It's earned, maintained, and reciprocated. And family isn't an excuse for taking advantage of someone's love. The slap that started it all was the end of our old relationship and the beginning of a better one. Sometimes the best revenge is helping someone become the person they should have been all along.